Celia Alcott, student and women's lib activist at Fulchester University, was convicted in March of having stolen an antique vase from the quarters of her tutor, Martin Archer, and sentenced to 6 months in prison. At her trial, damning evidence was given by Professor Archer and also from his wife, Winifred, even though the vase had not been found in Celia's possession. For her part, Winifred Archer testified that the vase had been in its accustomed position just before a tutorial Celia had had with her husband on the day of the theft and missing afterwards. Barely 3 weeks after Celia Alcott had been committed to prison, however, the vase came to light in an auction sale at Market Storley, a town 20 miles from Fulchester. And today in the Crown Court, it is Winifred Archer who stands trial. She is accused of perjury and of conspiring to pervert the course of justice.
So, Mr. Lloyd, the position is that Celia Alcott's conviction was quashed by the Court of Criminal Division on the grounds that the trial judge had misdirected the jury.
Yes, my lord, that's correct.
And the Court of Appeal were not asked to consider any fresh evidence.
No, my lord. Miss Alcott was freed by the Court of Appeal on a technicality, one might say.
And this prosecution, you say, is not brought by the police. It is a private prosecution?
Yes, my lord.
Well, hadn't the jury better know who is bringing it?
Oh, well, if your lordship thinks so, it is being brought by the Students' Union at Fulchester University.
The Students' Union? Bringing a charge that one of their own lecturers and his wife deliberately framed a student so that she was convicted and went to prison?
Yes, my lord, just that.
Oh, well, call your evidence.
Thank you, my lord. I call Detective Sergeant Halliday.
Detective Sergeant Halliday, please.
I swear by Almighty God, the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You're Detective Sergeant Alexander Halliday of the Fulchester CID.
I am.
In a case in March 1973 in which Celia Alcott, a student at Fulchester University, was convicted of theft, did you give evidence as the arresting officer?
I did.
Will you tell the court how you first became involved in this case, please?
Very well, sir. On December the 4th last, I was asked to go to the campus quarters of Professor Martin Archer, lecturer in history at Fulchester University, to investigate the disappearance of an antique vase. Well, the professor's wife, Mrs. Winifred Archer, told me that the vase was normally kept on a stand by the French windows in the professor's study, and that it had definitely been there before a student called Celia Alcott had arrived for her tutorial with the professor at 3 p.m., and that it was found to be gone at 5 p.m. That was just 30 minutes after Miss Alcott's departure. Nobody else had called, and the professor confirmed that Miss Alcott arrived and departed by means of the French windows.
I see. So what did you do, Sergeant?
Well, naturally, sir, I went to interview Miss Alcott. Now, the young lady lived on the campus on the second floor of Denver College, accommodation block. She denied stealing the vase, in fact, any knowledge of it whatever. So I got a warrant and I searched her room. But the vase didn't come to light. Well, then 2 days later,
Yes, Sergeant.
Well, I think I should say here, sir, the fact of the matter was I wasn't altogether happy with Miss Alcott generally. But she was belligerent. She seemed to be laughing at me in an odd sort of way, sir, as though she were having a go, if the phrase is permissible, my lord. So I kept watch on her. And on December the 6th at 1:45 p.m., I observed Miss Alcott go into a bank and make a cash deposit, which on investigation turned out to be for £150, which was just about the resale value of the missing vase on the open market.
You confronted Miss Alcott with this intelligence, did you?
Yes, sir, I saw her the same evening. Now, I told her I knew she had no income apart from a student grant, but she evaded my questions for a while, and then when finally she told me that she'd received the money as a gift from Professor Archer.
As a gift?
Yes, sir.
From Professor Archer?
That's right. It seems that she was deeply involved in what is called the Women's Liberation Movement, and she reckoned that he was sympathetic too, and as a consequence he'd given her the £150.
Well, you'd obviously checked this story out with Professor Archer. What did he say?
He said it was a load of old cobblers, sir. A lot of old nonsense, my lord.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Yes, he denied he had any sympathy whatever with the Women's Liberation Movement. In fact, he stated categorically that he'd never given Celia Alcott any money. Well, his wife was able to support him in this. She produced bank statements going back over the past 9 months, and there were no cash withdrawals of £150 at any time.
So you then proceeded to the arrest of Celia Alcott, did you?
Forthwith, sir.
Now, did Miss Alcott at any time admit to you the theft of that vase?
No, sir, no. She stuck to her story throughout the whole affair, even in court. Although the jury were only out half an hour before returning a guilty verdict.
And both Archer and his wife gave evidence against Miss Alcott, which resulted in her conviction.
Yes, sir, particularly that he'd never given her any money as she claimed.
Now, did Miss Alcott's conviction and sentence end the matter for you, Sergeant?
Well, no, sir, no. You see, there was still the matter of the missing vase, sir. And it was on our lists, and in fact, in early April it turned up at an auction sale in Market Stawley, that's west of Fulchester, sir. The vase had belonged to an old gentleman called Mr. Randall, who just died, and his effects were being sold up. And we discovered that he'd bought the vase in mid-December from an antique shop in the town. The proprietor was a Mr. Victor Perbright.
Now, did you visit Mr. Perbright and question him as to how he'd come by the vase, Sergeant?
Yes, sir.
And what did he say?
No, Mr.
My lord, my learned friend is anxious that this question is asked. He has no objection.
Yes, sir, Mr. Logan?
It is, my lord.
Very well, Sergeant, you may answer the question.
Well, as it happened, Mr. Perbright remembered the vase very well, sir. He said that on December the 5th previous, a woman had approached him offering to sell him the vase. Well, he recognized it at once, sir, as being a good example of early Byzantine pottery. So he offered her £150 for it, and this she accepted.
Now, December the 5th, that's the day after the vase went missing from Professor Archer's university quarters.
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Perbright say whether he recognized the woman, Sergeant?
Well, he said he'd never seen her before, if that's what you mean, sir.
Could he describe her, Sergeant?
Yes, sir. Yes, he could, sir. He said that she was a middle-aged woman with ash-blonde hair, sir.
Middle-aged, ash-blonde hair.
Yes.
Not young, dark.
No?
Not at all like Celia Alcott, then,
No.
who'd already been convicted and sent to prison for the offence. But like someone else in the case?
Well, no, I wouldn't know.
Mr.
I
Lloyd,
wouldn't,
that
sir.
is a question for the jury, not for the sergeant.
Very well. The fact is that notwithstanding Mr. Perbright's evidence, you did not instigate this prosecution.
No, sir, that is correct. We did not.
And the Students' Union came forward and they represented to you that the evidence established that the woman who'd sold the vase was not Celia Alcott.
Yes, sir, that is so.
So what did you do?
Well, sir, the woman who'd sold Mr. Perbright the vase had left her name and address, sir, which was Kate Greer of 20 Brabham Road, Fulchester. Well, there turned out to be no such address and no such woman as far as we could discover. Well, I also interviewed Mrs. Archer, who denied selling her own vase or even that she'd been in Market Stawley on December the 5th. Well, then while we were trying to make up our minds how best to proceed, sir, I had another request to go to the Archer's quarters on the university campus.
Yes, before that happened, had you seen Martin Archer about the new evidence?
Well, yes, I had told him about it, sir, yes.
Did he seem interested?
Well, he seemed very, very agitated, sir. He asked a lot of questions, some of them several times over.
And how long was it between that interview and your next visit to the Archers?
2 days.
And why did you go to the house again?
To investigate a death, sir.
A death?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you tell us about it, please?
Yes, sir. Well, a call came from Mrs. Archer on April the 20th last. She said she came downstairs and discovered her husband sprawled over his desk in the study. He'd been working late the night before, and beside him was a bottle which had contained sleeping pills. He was dead.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Mr. Logan?
Sergeant Halliday, I suppose you made the usual inquiries into Professor Archer's death. What did you find?
Well, there was no note or anything like that, sir. The inquest was held a week later, and death was ascribed to a massive overdose of barbiturates. The coroner returned a verdict of suicide.
Now, when you first saw Victor Perbright, he simply told you that the woman who'd sold him the vase was middle-aged with ash-blonde hair and that she'd given her name as Kate Greer and that she lived at Brabham Road, which doesn't exist. He told you nothing more.
No, that was all.
And then about a week later, the Students' Union told you that they had established a definite identification between the woman in his shop and the lady who is now on trial, Mrs. Archer.
Yes, sir.
Did they or Mr. Perbright tell you how they'd done this?
Well, they both said the same thing, sir, that the leaders of the Students' Union had gone to Mr. Perbright and they'd showed him a photograph of Mrs. Archer, and he claimed he recognized her.
Sergeant, surely the normal police method is to show the witness a whole book of photographs, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we consider it dangerous to show a witness a photograph and say, is this the man or is this the woman? Well, we consider it safer to show the witness a whole sheaf of photographs to choose from. I mean, otherwise you suggest too much to the witness. It's a matter of psychology.
Quite. That is the whole purpose of an identity parade, isn't it?
Yes, my lord.
Carry on, Mr. Langdon.
Well, you rejected the suggested identification as unreliable, then, you're telling us, Sergeant.
Well, it struck us that it might not have been made under the most desirable conditions. Yes, sir.
Sergeant Halliday, I want to ask you a more speculative question now. Do you really believe there actually was a middle-aged woman with ash-blonde hair who sold the vase to Mr. Perbright?
I beg your pardon, sir?
Well, she gave her name as Kate Greer, you tell us. Are you acquainted with the name Kate Millett, Sergeant?
Kate Millett? No, I don't think so, sir, no.
Or Germaine Greer?
Just a minute, sir. They're,
Ladies famous for their activities in the sphere of women's lib, Sergeant. Exactly. Now, Kate Greer is an amalgam of the two, it would seem. And she lived at 20 Brabham Road. Yes, how do you spell that, I wonder?
Spell it, sir?
Yes.
B-R-A-B-U-R-N. But there's no such road, sir.
No, perhaps not, but the name here might well be a simple inversion of the two words burn and bra, mightn't they? Burning the bra, Sergeant, an activity much favoured by certain extremists of the women's liberation movement, or so we're led to believe. We seem to be confronted with something of a joke here, don't we, Sergeant? An in-joke. You might almost say a student prank. Now, would that be the behaviour of a settled, mature woman like the accused? Or of someone quite different?
Victor Perbright, please. We come this way, sir, please.
What is your religion, please?
Well, I was brought up Church of England.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
You are Victor Perbright, antique dealer of 42 the Butter Walk, Market Stawley.
That's right. It's my shop. I live above it. It's very...
Yes, I see. Now, Mr. Perbright, I want you to look at an object that we have here and see if you recognise it.
Just hold on to it. Yes. Yes, this is a vase I purchased for £150 from a woman who brought it to my shop on December the 5th last. It's a decent example of a middle period Byzantine vase, probably from Thessaloniki, or it might be from Cyprus. Anyway, because of its condition, I paid £150 for it. I sold it on December the 12th to a Mr. Randall, a client of mine who had a collection of similar stuff. He's since dead, I'm sorry to say.
Yes, I see. Right, yes, thank you, Mr. Perbright. The vase should be marked Exhibit 1.
Thank you, sir.
Now, did you ask this lady for her name when she sold you the vase, Mr. Perbright?
Oh, yes, we have to do that. Well, she called herself Kate Greer of 20 Brabham Road, Fulchester.
And did you pay her for the purchase by cheque or in cash?
Oh, in cash. Most of our business is done by cash. Well, I mean, you've got to be ready to pay up there and then if you want to get the good stuff.
Now, how long did your business with this lady, Kate Greer, as she called herself, take?
How long? Well, about 20 minutes, I suppose.
20 minutes?
Yes. You see, it didn't take me long to realise that the vase she was offering me was the genuine article, so then it was just a question of the price. Well, I said £150 and, well, she agreed without hesitation.
Without hesitation?
Yes.
Well, is that usual, Mr. Perbright?
I'm sorry.
I think what Mr. Lloyd is anxious to establish, Mr. Perbright, is whether or not you observed signs of haste, of impatience to settle matters in the woman calling herself Kate Greer who sold you the vase.
Oh, I see. Ah.
Yes, well, did you?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes. She did seem to be in rather a race to get the business finished, now I come to think of it. I was a bit surprised. People generally like to stay for a chat, look at the other goods, that sort of thing.
Yes, I see. Thank you, Mr. Pirbright.
Now, can you tell me this? Did you give the police a description of the lady who came into your shop on December the 5th and sold you the vase?
Oh, yes, I did.
Well, what was the description, please?
Well, I said she was a middle-aged woman with fair greying hair, a sort of ashy blonde it was.
Now, could you recognise this same lady if you saw her again?
Oh, yes, no question of that.
Do you see her in court today?
Yes, it's that woman there, the accused, Winifred Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pirbright.
Mr. Pirbright, you tell us that Miss Greer, whom you now identify as having been, in fact, Mrs. Archer, was in your shop on December the 5th for some 20 minutes. Is that right?
Yes, about 20 minutes.
About. Does that mean more or less?
Oh, possibly more, possibly less.
No, I'm afraid that won't quite do, Mr. Pirbright. I would like to be assured as to the exact length of time that she was there.
Well, that's rather a tall order when you come to think of it. Well, less rather than more, shall we say.
Well, the transaction occupied 20 minutes at the outside. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It's not very long, Mr. Pirbright. Not very long to get a good look at a person, the sort of look that would justify a positive identification of her some 4 months after the event, anyway.
Well, 20 minutes is plenty of time to have a good look at a person.
Well, is it? Oh, very well, then. Let's put the whole encounter to the test. First of all, the physical conditions.
Look, I'm not going to discuss
The physical
lady's
conditions,
physical
Mr. Pirbright, what it was like in your shop when the lady called and sold you the vase. What time of day was it? Can you remember?
Yes, well, I think it was about 11 o'clock in the morning.
I see. And the weather?
Good heavens, you don't expect me to remember that? Who could?
Well, if I were to tell you that snow fell at about midday on the 5th, would that refresh your memory?
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right, snow did fall. It had been threatening all the morning.
There's not much light in the sky then, and inside...
Not very
would you describe your shop as a lightsome place, Mr. Pirbright?
Lightsome place. Well, there's plenty of light, if that's what you mean.
Yes, I'll have to admit as to only having seen it once, but isn't there stuff stacked up against such windows as it possesses?
Well, there's a certain amount. I'm cramped for space, really. I ought to have a bigger premises.
And what's the artificial lighting?
Artificial light? Well, it's adequate.
And half a dozen light bulbs? 3?
Well, 2. Yes, actually there are 2, but they're 200 watts.
And these were burning that morning?
Well, I imagine so.
You imagine so?
Well, I mean, they would have been burning, wouldn't they, naturally?
Well, no daylight to speak of then, and something approaching primeval gloom in your shop.
Primeval gloom in my shop? Well,
yes. Now, how exactly was the 20 minutes Mrs. Archer was allegedly in the shop with you used up, Mr. Pirbright?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, you've told us that you had no trouble in spotting the vase for what it was, even in that shocking light, that you offered her £150 for it, which she snapped up. Now, how long did all that take?
Well,
20 minutes? Surely not.
Well, no, obviously not as long as that. No, I think only about 5 minutes.
Yes, most of which you would, in fact, have spent examining the vase rather than the caller, wouldn't you?
Well, you look at
so that even of that 5 minutes, you could only have been directly regarding the woman who called herself Kate Greer for how long? A minute or a minute and a half?
Well, this is all really very difficult to say.
Yes, I'm sorry to have to be so niggling, Mr. Pirbright, but here's something that shouldn't be quite so difficult to say. What happened to the rest of the 20 minutes?
Well, what do you mean, what happened?
Well, if the business only took 5 minutes or so, what were you doing for the rest of the time that Kate Greer was in your emporium? Were you writing letters or tidying up? What?
No, I would, during that time, I would be getting the money from the safe, I suppose, the 150.
Ah, the safe. Now, where is that kept? In another part of the shop?
Well, it's in the living quarters, actually, upstairs.
Oh, not in the shop at all?
No.
Well, this is most interesting. So for perhaps 15 of the 20 minutes the whole transaction occupied, you weren't even face-to-face with your caller at all.
Now, look here. I saw quite enough of that woman in my shop that day to be able to identify her later on. Let's have no nonsense about that. Well, when I came back with the money, I would have to ask her a name and address and put it in the book. Well, all that would take a little while more.
A little while more that you must have been looking in the book since you were writing in it.
Look, the woman who sold me that vase that day is the accused. There, Winifred Archer.
Mr. Pirbright, In late April, did 2 members of the Fulchester University Students' Union visit you?
Yes, they did, but I don't want to talk about that.
Well, I'm very much afraid you'll have to talk about it, Mr. Pirbright. All this is extremely relevant. Now, these members of the Students' Union showed you a photograph of Mrs. Winifred Archer, did they not?
Yes, they did.
Now, did they also perhaps suggest to you that this was the woman who sold you the vase on the 5th of December?
No, they didn't do that. They simply told me that a young woman was in prison for the theft of a vase. And then they asked me if I could identify Mrs. Archer as the woman who came into my shop. Well, I said yes at once.
At once?
Well, yes, at once. It was obvious. It was the woman who had called herself Kate Greer.
You're absolutely certain. There was no doubt in your mind whatsoever.
But it was all exactly as I recalled it, my lord. The same face, the same features, the same ashy blonde hair.
Ah, yes, of course. You place great store by that ash blonde hair, don't you?
I don't know what you mean,
Well,
sir.
the association is automatically middle age. Ash blonde is the name given to the colouring of a woman who was once fair and is now going grey. I notice that you wear 2 pairs of spectacles, Mr. Pirbright.
Well, yes, I do. Is it important?
Oh, no, it's interesting. One for distance and one for close work, presumably.
Yes.
Your sight is, in fact, pretty bad, is it?
Look, there's nothing the matter with my sight. It's just that I'm not quite as young as I used to be. I need a little help, that's all.
Yes, of course, Mr. Pirbright. And what glasses did you have on when Kate Greer entered your shop on December the 5th?
Dear me, good heavens, how am I expected to recall that? Well, I suppose I'd have me distance glasses on. It would be the usual thing.
The usual thing. But what were you doing when Kate Greer entered? Can you recall that?
Well, let's see, it was early in the morning. Nothing much had happened. Yes, that's right, I remember. I was doing my Yes, I was doing my ledger. It all comes back to me.
Your ledger? Then you'd surely have been wearing your reading glasses, wouldn't you?
Well, yes. But it doesn't make any difference. I may have been wearing my reading glasses through the whole interview. I don't know. But as I say, I can see these things at a distance quite clearly enough.
I see, Mr. Pirbright. Now, could you look at this document, please?
Well, I don't understand this. It just seems to be a clipping from a newspaper.
Yes, I apologise, Mr. Pirbright. The document was simply a ruse to get you to change your glasses. Now, if you wouldn't mind looking this way...
My lord, I really must
No,
protest.
no, Mr. Lloyd. We must let Mr. Logan get on with it.
Well, I assure you, my lord, that I'm merely trying to carry out my duty to my client. Now, Mr. Pirbright, who is this standing beside me, please? No, don't change your glasses again. Now, just tell me what you see.
Why, there's a woman standing beside you.
Yes, but a young woman or an old woman? Can you tell the court?
It's a woman with ash blonde hair.
Ah, now, would you look towards the dock, please? Over here. Now, is this the accused, Winifred Archer? Or have I asked her to come down and stand by me and place someone else in the dock? Can you tell for certain?
Well, I think it's still the accused in the dock. Yes, but no, I can't say for certain.
I see, Mr. Pirbright. Thank you, that is all.
Yes, it is the same.
The case of the Queen against Archer will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. Celia Alcott, student and women's lib activist at Fulchester University, was found guilty of stealing an antique vase from her tutor, Professor Martin Archer, but her sentence was quashed on appeal. The case has been reopened, and today in the Crown Court, Winifred Archer is on trial for perjury and for conspiring to pervert the course of justice. 3 weeks after Celia Alcott was sent to prison, Mrs. Archer came downstairs one morning to find her husband slumped over his study desk. A bottle that had contained sleeping pills was found beside him, and he was dead. A coroner's court returned a verdict of suicide. The prosecution in the case of Winifred Archer has been brought privately by the members of Fulchester University Students' Union.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
You are Celia Marilyn Alcott, a student residing at Fulchester University.
That's right.
In 1972, you were convicted of stealing a vase from your tutor, Professor Archer, and you served 4 months in prison before your conviction was set aside.
Yes, that's correct.
Have you always protested your innocence of this crime?
I have.
And you now protest it once more?
I do. I didn't steal a vase from Martin and Winifred Archer's quarters. I wasn't even aware of the existence of such an object. Evidence was fabricated against me and lies were told under oath. Winifred Archer could live with that afterwards, apparently, but poor Martin couldn't. He killed himself to prove it.
My lord, I object most
Yes,
strongly
Mr.
to these
Logan.
conjectures.
Miss Alcott, I must warn you not to tell us what you think or believe, but only what you saw or heard.
It was a declaration of fact, that's all.
It was not an admissible observation, and you must accept my ruling on that. I may tell you that you will do yourself no good by being insolent.
At your trial, Miss Alcott, it was established that the resale value of this vase was £150, and police evidence was that 2 days after the vase had been reported missing, you visited your bank and you made a cash deposit of £150. Now, where did you get this money, please?
I said that at my trial. It was given to me by Martin Archer.
Your late history tutor.
Yes.
But Miss Alcott, giving testimony, Martin Archer denied point blank that he'd ever given you any money.
Yes. Yes, that's right, he did.
Well, how do you explain this, then?
He lied.
Professor Archer lied in court on oath.
I'm afraid so. He had decisions to make, of course. Choices, just like the rest of us. I'm not sure exactly how he made up his mind how to act, but he obviously decided I was expendable, so he betrayed me.
Can you enlarge on that, Miss Alcott?
No, I don't think I can, really. People don't always act in a way you can understand. Martin Archer gave me the money to help with my work, the women's lib movement, that is, and then chose to deny the fact. It was his decision.
Yes, but Professor Archer also testified that he had no sympathy whatever towards the women's liberation movement.
Yes, that's right too.
More lies?
Yes.
And as far as the £150 was concerned, police evidence clearly showed that Professor Archer had made no such cash withdrawal from his bank.
No. Well, that isn't so difficult, actually, to explain.
I'm sorry?
The fact is, he didn't give me the money in a lump sum. That would have been too obvious. It was for small amounts at different times, dribs and drabs.
You're saying then that this £150 was an accumulation of money given to you by Professor Archer?
Yes.
Given to you over a period of, well, what period of time?
3, perhaps 4 months.
Now, did you say this at your trial, Miss Alcott?
No.
Well, why on earth not? It's vital evidence.
I didn't think I'd be believed. It was difficult, all that, very difficult. Lies were being told all around me. The effect of that in the end is to make the truth seem like a worse lie. So I resolved to be very careful in what I said. I knew Martin wouldn't be talked out of anything, having once made up his mind that I was expendable. He was like that. His wife knew it and used the fact to manipulate him. It was she who made him lie and kept him lying too.
My lord.
Yes, Mr. Logan. Miss Alcott, once again you have made observations about matters which in all probability are hearsay or conjecture. Now just listen to the questions and answer them.
But this is all very important, my lord. Winifred Archer was always persuading her husband to do things he didn't want to do. He told me of it many times.
What, the professor told you about a certain state of affairs between himself and his wife?
Yes, my lord.
Well, of course, the difficulty is that since the professor is dead, your evidence is hearsay. Most of it will be inadmissible, but let's see how we get on. But once again, I will ask you no more accusations, you understand?
Whatever you say.
Now, Miss Alcott, perhaps it would help if you could tell us how well you were acquainted with the domestic situation of the Archers.
Well, I knew it as well as an outsider could, I suppose. I went there for tutorials weekly, and sometimes Winifred Archer would drop into the study for a brief word before I left. Almost from the beginning, I could see they weren't a happy couple. He was worried about his wife's hold over him. He said he knew that one day she'd make him do something he'd regret, and that would be the death of him.
The death of him?
Yes.
Well, Miss Alcott, why did Professor Archer confide in you in these matters?
We'd grown close. Yes. Well, I suppose it's got to come out in the end. I kept quiet about it at my trial, but there's no point in that anymore. For just over a month, before the business of the vase, Martin Archer and I were having an affair.
I see. How did this come about, exactly?
How does it ever come about? We discovered we had things in common. Surprisingly enough, from my point of view. I'd always taken Martin for what he appeared to be, conservative, reactionary. But underneath that facade, he had some genuinely progressive ideas. About women's lib, for instance. He quite astonished me by his understanding of what I and my friends were trying to do. That's why he gave me the money. He wanted to be part of our work, just so long as he didn't have to declare the fact publicly.
Well, why did he fear making his loyalties public? Did he tell you that?
Well, he was a contradictory man. Sometimes today, you find people who are crypto-conservatives. They shout for the left, but they lean to the right when the crunch comes. Well, Martin was that rather rarer thing, a crypto-liberal. He really felt for the cause of reform.
Anyway, understanding between you ripened into love.
Oh, come off it. Martin was lonely. And as for me, well, I suppose I was just susceptible. But I dare say the whole thing was injudicious.
Are you saying that in general you regret the affair?
Oh, yes. It cost too much by half.
What does that mean?
Martin's dead.
Now, what brought the affair to an end?
Well, just before the beginning of December, Winifred Archer found out what was going on. I went there for my tutorial as usual on December the 4th, and he said it would be better if I went away for a while, and he said I was to use the money he'd given me for this purpose.
Now, that's the money he'd contributed over a period of time to your women's lib work.
Yes.
So Professor Archer was now saying that you must use this money to get away from Fulchester. Is that right?
Yes. Winifred Archer came into the study at this point, and she started to curse me is the only way I can put it. She called me a filthy little whore, a tramp. She turned on poor Martin like a harpy. She threatened to report him to the authorities and put an end to his academic career.
I mean, report that he'd been having an affair with a student, which would have meant he'd have to face a disciplinary committee.
Yes. Well, Martin, well, he was a weak man, and Fulchester seemed to be his only security.
Now, did Mrs. Archer say anything else?
She said she'd pay me out for what I'd done, no matter what it took.
And this you took as a definite and a serious threat to harm you?
You should have seen the state she was in. I was frightened, I just ran.
Now, again, Miss Alcott, this is something that you failed to say at your trial.
Well, I was upset when Martin began to tell such black lies about me. That really was an awful experience. But then it occurred to me that he must be in trouble. He must be in need to behave like that.
But you were in trouble yourself. Surely you were facing a prison sentence.
You can always get through prison. It's something you're prepared to face when you're involved in social struggle. And it would have ruined his career if I'd spoken about our affair. Well, I couldn't take the responsibility for that. Martin Archer knew that his wife was capable of destroying him, so no matter what I'd said, he would have had to do as she told him. There was a sort of dreadful inevitability about it all. I was expendable.
I see. Well, one last question, Miss Alcott. On December the 5th, 1972, did you visit an antique shop in Market Stawley and sell an antique vase there?
No. I was only ever in Market Stawley once in my life, and that was over 18 months ago.
Where were you, in fact, on December the 5th last?
Fulchester University. I was in my room most of the day. The weather was shocking, so I just got on with my study.
Thank you, Miss Alcott.
Miss Alcott, you said that Professor Archer lied, that he betrayed you, found you expendable, yet you don't seem to display any particular resentment towards him. That is the case, isn't it? You don't feel any resentment towards him?
Well, I realise this must seem strange, but where was the sense in being angry at Martin? He was the sort of man you could only feel sorry for. And anyway, he's passed judgment on himself now.
Miss Alcott, I will
Look,
not
I
warn
must
you
be
again.
able to say this, surely. He was a man with a conscience. It could only have been guilt that made him kill himself. His wife must take the blame for that too. She isn't only a liar, she's a murderer!
Miss Alcott, you've confronted us today with two altogether new pieces of evidence, two things that you chose not to say at your trial, apparently.
There were things I felt unable to say at the time, yes.
Well, to take the love affair to begin with, then, you're saying that you consciously performed the extremely noble, not to say heroic, act of refraining from mentioning this at your trial.
I don't see it as noble or heroic.
Well, Professor Archer was telling the most outrageous lies about you, and as counsel for the prosecution has pointed out, you yourself were facing a prison sentence, yet you still chose to say nothing. My dear Miss Alcott, you're asking the jury to believe that you're little short of a saint.
You don't have to make it sound absurd.
Then you must make it sound sensible, mustn't you, Miss Alcott?
Well, the fact is, I felt guilty about Martin. By that, I mean that the affair was much more my responsibility than his. He was a weak man, and I took the initiative.
You led your history tutor astray, Miss Alcott, a sort of student femme fatale, and then you conveniently omitted to mention it at your trial.
Look, that happens to be the way it was. And I certainly wasn't going to make matters worse by dragging the whole wretched story through court. Better a few months in jail if it came to it. Much better.
Well, it remains remarkable. Now, this £150. You would obviously have needed a high moral purpose to confiscate monies donated to the sacred cause of women's lib.
My lord, the witness did not confiscate monies. She has testified she was instructed by the donor to apply them to different ends.
Well, unfortunately, with Professor Archer dead, we've only the witness's word for that, for almost anything, in fact. Why didn't she come out with these extraordinary tales at her trial, when the professor could have been called upon to support or deny them?
Thank you, both of you. That will do. I agree, Mr. Lloyd, that the word confiscate is improper in the context. On the other hand, I take Mr. Logan's point that we are now almost entirely in the realm of hearsay. Now, Miss Alcott, is there anyone who can support your claim that Professor Archer was giving you money for the women's liberation movement over the period in question?
That's a bit difficult. Martin wanted it kept secret about the money, so naturally I didn't tell anyone.
Not even any of your closer colleagues?
No. Too much danger from gossip.
Well, is there at least anyone who can support your story that you and the professor were lovers?
No one there either. We were discretion personified for obvious reasons. But does it matter, honestly?
This is a very serious matter, Miss Alcott.
Look, I know that. I'm asking you, what am I supposed to do? Tell lies? I should have thought we'd had enough fabricated evidence to be going on with.
Let us press on, Mr. Logan.
Thank you, my lord. Now, Miss Alcott, you tell us that on December the 5th, you were at Fulchester University all day, studying in your room.
Yes.
Well, you weren't alone and confined from dawn till dark, I hope. There must have been occasions when you emerged, and there would be those who could testify to that fact.
Well, I went down to hall for breakfast, yes, and I spoke to a couple of people then. I didn't have any lectures that day, though.
No, but lunch. What about lunch?
I had a sandwich in my room. I had a lot of work to do, so I just got on with it.
Until what time?
I'm not sure. Tea time, yes. I went to hall again at 6.
So from just after breakfast time on December the 5th until 6 p.m., you saw nobody. Not a soul who could testify as to your even being at the university.
I was in my room. It was such a dreadful day, there was nothing to do but work.
I see. Yes, of course. Miss Alcott, does the name Kate Greer mean anything to you?
Kate Greer?
Yes.
Nothing. Why should it?
Well, it's the name given by the woman who on December the 5th sold an antique vase belonging to Professor and Mrs. Archer to a dealer in Market Stawley. The name Kate Greer, as I'm sure you well know, is an amalgam of two of your more famous colleagues, and her address, Brabham Road, a play on the symbolic act of bra burning. Now, she's said to have had ash blonde hair.
Well, that lets me right out, doesn't it? I'm dark, and I've always been dark.
Yes, but if you had found out by some means or other that the dealer was short-sighted, Miss Alcott, and worn a wig like this, You'd have looked very much older in a wig like this, wouldn't you? But would a real older woman have made such a weak, feebly pointed joke about her name and address? That was where you let yourself down, Miss Alcott. That was where you betrayed your youth. It was you who sold the vase on December the 5th in Market Stawley, wasn't it, Miss Alcott?
My lord, I'm not sure if I'm being asked a question or told to confess to nameless crimes. Perhaps you can advise me on how I should reply.
Counsel is asking you, Miss Alcott, whether or not you sold an antique vase belonging to Professor and Mrs. Archer in Market Stawley on the 5th of December last.
Then the answer is no.
You don't need to be reminded that you're on oath, Miss Alcott, do you?
Of course not.
No further questions, my lord.
No re-examination.
Then you may stand down, Miss Alcott.
Well, my lord,
That is the case of the prosecution, my lord.
My lord, it happens that I have certain medical evidence to call that won't take long, but it is quite vital, and as the doctor involved is a very busy man, it would help greatly if he could be heard first, that is, before the accused.
Really, I'm not very partial to this sort of thing, you know, Mr. Logan. Hard as it may be to believe, there are some of us in this world every bit as busy as doctors. However, I suppose if counsel for the prosecution has no objection, then I must accede to your request.
I have no objections.
Well, you may proceed.
Call Dr. Joseph Ross. Thank you, my lord.
Dr. Joseph Ross, please.
What is your religion?
The Church of England.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Dr. Joseph Ross, and you're in general practice at number 1 Calderley Avenue, Fulchester?
Yes, that is correct.
And do you know the accused, Mrs. Winifred Archer?
I have met her once, twice, yes.
And were you also acquainted with the accused's husband, the late Professor Martin Archer?
Yes, for about 5 years before his death, Professor Archer was a National Health Service patient in my panel. Then on the morning of April the 20th last, I received a call from Mrs. Archer saying that her husband was dead. I went at once to their quarters, where I found Professor Archer slumped over a desk with an empty pill bottle by his side. The subsequent post-mortem showed the cause of death to be due to a massive overdose of barbiturates.
Mr. Logan, I'm most anxious to know where all this is leading us.
Well, my lord, it leads to the professor's possible motives for his suicide. Mrs. Archer is charged with conspiring with him, and in my submission it is admissible. I understand that Mr. Lloyd has no objection.
You'd say, Mr. Lloyd?
It is so, my lord.
Very well, go on.
Yes, Doctor, were these barbiturates in fact pills that you yourself had prescribed for Professor Archer?
They were, yes. Professor Archer normally enjoyed very good health, but he had been through a period of stress some 6 months previously and was unable to sleep. I prescribed the pills accordingly. No doubt I did over-prescribe. They're always telling us that we do, but I had no reason then to think that Professor Archer might use the pills for some other purpose.
Yes, but had you some reason to think that at a later stage, perhaps?
No. If I'd thought that, I should at once have checked on such prescriptions as had been issued to him and seen that anything dangerous was removed. I think I should say, though, that Professor Archer was a strange man and highly unpredictable. He suffered from anxieties, being basically a timorous person. He found genuine assurance only in the sphere of his work. Elsewhere, he was indecisive, easily put upon, and given to irrational fears.
What sort of fears, precisely, Doctor?
Well, for example, he came to me in early March about swelling he had in the abdominal area, which was causing him some discomfort. And he seemed to have made up his mind before he even came into the surgery that this was a cancer.
He was a hypochondriac, then, you're saying?
No. Well, not consistently. What he plainly seemed to have at that time was a simple contusion caused by a fall he told me he'd had a few days previously. I told him not to be silly, to go about his business, to think of other things.
And did that satisfy Professor Archer?
No, apparently not. He came back to see me a week later, March the 17th, that would have been, and said he was now sure that the swelling was a cancer, that it was growing in size, and he virtually demanded an exploratory operation.
And what was your reaction to that, Doctor?
Well, in 15 years of practice, I have never yet allowed a patient to diagnose his own complaint, let alone say what the treatment should be. I certainly was not going to begin with Professor Archer. I kept my patience. I made a very detailed examination. If anything, it seemed to me that the swelling was reducing nicely. Sometimes in that part of the body, a contusion will take longer to reduce than elsewhere, you know. As far as I was concerned, I could see absolutely no reason for surgery.
And that satisfied Professor Archer?
On the contrary, he became quite angry. He started to say that if he could not get the kind of medical attention to which he was entitled from me, he would go elsewhere. Well, I did know that he had other things on his mind at that time. The trial of a student of his who apparently had stolen a valuable vase from him was about to begin, so I merely advised him to try to be calmer, but he would not be consoled, and we did not part the best of friends, I am afraid.
And that was the last time you saw Professor Archer, was it, Doctor?
Alive, yes.
So the fear of cancer could have remained very real in his mind.
Oh, yes. Now I would say that it certainly did.
It could even have assumed such proportions for him as to lead him into irresponsible action?
Well, I have known such things to happen before, and Professor Archer was a highly impressionable man.
Thank you, Dr. Ross.
Dr. Ross, were you called to the inquest on Martin Archer?
To give evidence as to the disposition of the body after death and of having prescribed the barbiturate, yes.
Then why didn't you tell the coroner what you've just told this court, that Professor Archer seemed to be under the impression that he was suffering from cancer?
I did mention his tendency to irrational fears, but I did not specify. You understand, I hadn't taken his little obsession remotely seriously. These anxiety-prone people are all the same. One week it will be cancer they're afraid of, the next it will be cholesterol level or air pollution. But insofar as he didn't contact me again, I presumed that the matter had ceased to worry him.
You'd no idea, then, why Professor Archer took his life?
I'm sorry?
Well, you obviously didn't think it was because of an unfounded worry about cancer.
Not at that stage, no.
On the other hand,
However,
you appreciated that he had some very real worries about the trial of Celia Alcott.
I didn't say that.
Well, surely you've testified you knew that this was on his mind, perhaps causing the worry about the cancer.
I didn't mean to put it as strongly as that. I simply meant that a general climate of anxiety can help to give strength to a particular fixation, but I didn't gather the impression that the two things were connected.
Yet the trial was a serious business for him, wasn't it? Consuming, sapping of nervous energy.
He didn't speak of it directly to me. I know nothing of all that.
Dr. Ross, in your experience, was Professor Archer an honest man?
Honest?
Reliable, given to telling the truth. Likely to be gravely upset, in fact, when for one reason or another he had failed to be completely honest.
Well, I don't see how Dr. Ross can be expected to answer that question. It's quite outside the realm of expert opinion.
I'll put it another way. Dr. Ross, isn't there at least as much reason why Professor Archer should have killed himself over a lapse in a matter of personal honour as that he imagined he had cancer? Now, surely there was no history of suicide attempts?
Oh, no. But if I don't misunderstand what you're saying, there is considerable difference involved here. I know nothing of lapses of personal honour, but I do know something of Professor Archer's physical condition.
Exactly, and you've testified that he was a fit man. Well, Doctor, that's right, isn't it?
You know, it's an odd thing in a life of doctoring, but one is forced to admit occasionally that the patient can know more than the physician. At the time of the post-mortem on Professor Archer, I asked the surgeon responsible to send me a tissue sample. I think he thought I was a bit touched. I'm not at all sure what my own motives were at the time myself. At any event, the results of the analysis did not come through until long after the inquest. But the subtissue of that swelling was, it seems, malignant. Professor Archer was completely right. He was developing a cancer.
The case of the Queen against Archer will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. Winifred Archer is on trial for perjury and conspiring to pervert the course of justice. It is alleged that she falsely gave evidence that Celia Alcott, a student who was having an affair with her husband, Professor Archer, stole a valuable vase from the Archers' home. It has just been revealed that Professor Archer, who committed suicide 3 weeks after Celia was found guilty, believed that he was dying of cancer. An interesting feature of the case is that the prosecution is being brought by the members of the Fulchester University Students' Union, who feel that the police have been too slow in acting.
Your religion, please.
Church of England.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mrs. Archer, on December the 4th, 1972, did something happen in your campus quarters at Fulchester University which you would like to refresh our memories about?
Yes. Yes, on that day, a rather valuable Byzantine vase that my husband and I brought back from a trip to Greece some 5 years ago disappeared. It was always kept on a stand by the French windows in my husband's study, and after a student, Celia Alcott, came for her tutorial on December the 4th, well, it just wasn't there anymore. I notified the police, who in due course arrested Celia Alcott.
And you gave testimony at her trial where she was in the event convicted of theft, did you not, Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Yes, now would you like to tell the court, is there anything that has happened since that might lead you to think that such testimony as you gave at her trial was erroneous or might not have been complete?
No, nothing whatever. I spoke the facts as I knew them, and I'm sure my late husband did the same.
Yes, we're not talking of your husband at the moment, only of you, Mrs. Archer. You told the truth and the whole truth at the trial of Celia Alcott, did you?
I believe I guaranteed as much by an oath I took at the time. That isn't the sort of thing I do lightly.
No, Mrs. Archer. It's been suggested in this trial that, in fact, you were the woman who sold the missing vase to the antique dealer Victor Perbright in the market stall on December the 5th.
Absolute nonsense.
You deny it outright, do you?
It's a contemptible allegation.
But Mr. Perbright has identified you as the woman who came to his shop with the vase.
Well, I really can't understand that. The poor man must be suffering from delusions.
And Mr. Perbright is quite clear that the woman who sold him the vase had ash blonde hair.
Everyone knows ash blonde hair can be simulated. Dark-haired women can wear wigs to make themselves look fairer or more mature, if that's the desire.
Quite, Mrs. Archer. Where were you, in fact, on December the 5th last?
I was at home most of the day. I went out early to do some shopping about 9 o'clock and was back by 12. I remember being very glad because the snow came down just as I returned.
I see. Yes, we've also heard in this trial that Miss Alcott was having a love affair with your husband.
Oh, yes, that affair. Now, that was news. I simply hadn't been informed, it seems. One catches up on all sorts of things by appearing in court.
You mean you didn't know anything about it?
Miss Alcott's testimony was the first I'd heard of it.
Yes, but Miss Alcott has also testified that you found out about the affair in early December and turned on your husband like a harpy, I think was the expression she used, threatening to expose him to the authorities.
Yes, I listened to all that with some amazement, too.
Amazement?
It was like watching television.
You're saying that none of it happened?
Perhaps to 3 other people, not to Martin, Miss Alcott and me.
And Mrs. Archer, there's a grave divergency in testimony here, and your explanation is that...
Miss Alcott's lying. Oh, one can see why, of course. She still has the £150 that she deposited in her bank account on December the 6th to explain away. At her trial, poor Martin was still alive. So she obviously couldn't say anything so outrageous as they'd been lovers and he'd given her the money in dribs and drabs. This women's lib business has our hoist by her own petard, doesn't it? Initially, she claimed the money was given her for that alone. Now she has to find some way of making it all seem more personal, so it becomes money for services rendered.
Mrs. Archer, I don't think it at all proper for you to make allegations like that under the guise of giving evidence. You are simply telling us, are you, that you knew nothing whatever of any affair between your husband and Miss Alcott?
Nothing whatever, my lord.
And to the best of your knowledge, your husband never gave Miss Alcott money?
None. It's a fatuous suggestion, in fact. It implies we were rich enough to let £150 slip away over a few months without noticing it.
Yes, Mrs. Archer. Now, let's talk about the money for a few moments. You kept a fairly close eye on the family budget, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Martin was completely vague about that sort of thing.
Yes, can you tell us what the professor's income was, please?
$5,300 a year.
And were there any increments or gratuities on top of that?
For certain things, Martin could claim expenses from the university, yes. Generally, this wouldn't come to more than a couple of hundred a year. It's all detailed in our accounts.
And there was no other source of income?
None.
I see. Therefore, there was no way Professor Archer could have paid £150 for Celia Alcott except out of the family account. And the abstraction of this kind of money, even in small amounts, would most certainly have been noticed by you.
Certainly.
Now, Mrs. Archer, we come to the question of your husband's suicide. The court appreciates this must still be very painful for you, but would you tell us, in your own words, just what happened?
On the morning of April 20th, I came down to get breakfast at 8 o'clock. Martin had stayed up late the night before correcting papers, and I thought he must have slept on the sofa in his study. He did that sometimes when he was busy. But when I took something into him, he was lying across the desk. His body was twisted in an odd sort of way. On the floor beside him was...
It will be sufficient concerning this if you simply tell us if you have anything to add to what Sergeant Halliday has already said, Mrs. Archer.
Nothing whatever.
Do you feel well enough to continue, or would you like me to adjourn for a while?
No, I'm all right. This is very silly. I apologize.
Mrs. Archer, your husband's suicide obviously came as a great blow to you, but did it also come as a complete shock?
Oh, yes, it was terrible. I had no idea he was contemplating anything like that.
He'd never attempted suicide at any other time in his life?
No.
Nor mentioned the possibility of it, perhaps?
No. Not directly, no.
What does that mean?
Martin was a weak man, you know. He had private dreads that he seldom spoke about. One of them was a fear of illness. He told me once that the one thing he thought he couldn't stand would be a long, painful sickness with no hope. He said he might end his life rather than endure that.
When did he say this exactly, Mrs. Archer?
Many years ago, not long after we were married, but it stuck in my mind.
Is there anyone else who could testify to this attitude of your husband's, Mrs. Archer? A close friend, perhaps?
Not that I'm aware of, my lord. I repeat, my husband wasn't forthcoming in these matters. He was timorous, ashamed of his dreads, perhaps.
Did you know he was visiting his physician, Dr. Ross, just before his suicide?
No, I didn't.
Did he mention anything to you about a physical condition he thought he was suffering from at this time?
No. Of course, he might not have done that anyway.
Why not, Mrs. Archer?
I'm afraid it has to be said that things weren't good between Martin and myself towards the end of his life. His weakness and failure to assert himself had finally become too much for me, and for his part, he found me domineering and demanding. So we didn't speak much anymore, but there did seem to be something on his mind, yes.
But had you any reason to believe that Celia Alcott and the fact that she'd been put in prison might have been on his mind?
Goodness me, no, that'd be the last thing. He accepted that totally.
Quite. Yes, Miss Alcott has used an intriguing term of your late husband, Mrs. Archer. She's called him a crypto-liberal.
I'm not sure exactly what that means, obviously. But if it means that Miss Alcott thought Martin harboured radical left-wing views under a reactionary exterior, then she couldn't be more mistaken. Martin was all his life a conservative man. As far as women were concerned, he disliked self-assertion in them of any kind. He was almost a Victorian in that regard.
I see. Thank you, Mrs. Archer.
Mrs. Archer, you've just testified that you and your husband shared practically nothing in a private way. If he had a mortal illness, or thought he had, he wouldn't have acquainted you of the fact. It follows, then, that he'd be pretty certain to keep it a profound secret from you if he was having a love affair, wouldn't he?
Oh, that's an entirely different matter. That's the sort of thing one would know instinctively.
Yes, perhaps there are things one knows instinctively, Mrs. Archer, and I suggest you did know that your husband was having an affair, and in consequence you behaved exactly as Miss Alcott has testified. But my point at the moment is that you can't insist that Miss Alcott's story about the affair is absolute nonsense or pure fantasy, can you? Because you can't establish that. Now, as to money matters, the agreed documents tell us that for the last financial year, your husband's income was in total £5,321.52.
Yes, that would be right.
And an analysis shows that some £1,422 was drawn for cash purposes.
As much as that? I don't doubt it. I was worried about the size of our grocery bills that year, and I decided to shop around at various supermarkets. Naturally, I always had to pay cash there.
You give us your word on that, Mrs. Archer.
It's perfectly true.
I mean, cash withdrawals are notoriously hard to account for, aren't they? Now, did your husband normally sign the cheques to cash, or did you?
He did, as a rule. It was a joint account, meaning I could sign too, but our general habit was for Martin to make out the cheques.
Well, out of an annual cash withdrawal figure of £1,422, then signed by your husband, it surely wouldn't have been hard for him to keep by £150, would it?
That's ridiculous. Anyway, it's only from September onwards that he was supposed to be making contributions to Miss Alcott, or whatever it should
You
be.
might well have conceived the notion earlier and made provision.
You can't prove that.
Any more than you can disprove it. We do seem to be in an area of uncertainty here, don't we? Suicide. It's a dire action, isn't it? The ultimate token of despair. A man must really need a tremendous motivation to take his own life.
I don't know. I know nothing about suicide.
Your husband merely seemed to have something on his mind, you told us.
But we know what that was now. Dr. Ross has testified that Martin thought he had cancer, that in fact he actually did.
Yes, well, cancer can be commonly cured when it's caught in the early stages. Now, surely if your husband wasn't a complete hysteric, he would have found out if his condition was operable before he took the extreme step of taking his own life.
But Dr. Ross has admitted that he wouldn't take Martin seriously.
Oh, now come, Mrs. Archer, it really doesn't make sense, does it? Even a man with a built-in dread of cancer doesn't kill himself at the first suspicion of it. Now, suicide takes more than that. A conviction of final and irredeemable weakness, perhaps. Overwhelming remorse.
Remorse?
Certainly, it's one thing to be weak, it's another thing to betray all your principles in the name of weakness. Now, wasn't Martin Archer a haunted man as a result of the trial of Celia Alcott? And didn't he spend days and nights racked by conscience?
I don't know what you're talking about. Why should he be racked by conscience?
Because he'd lied, hadn't he? He'd lied on oath in a court of law.
This is outrageous. I don't know how you're allowed to stand there and say it. What I have never understood in any of this is just why I should have disliked Celia Alcott so much that I would fabricate evidence and commit perjury simply to have her put away for a few months.
Oh, that's easy, Mrs. Archer. Old-fashioned jealousy. A younger woman stealing your husband from you. You may not have cared for him much anymore, but you certainly weren't having that. Now, on December the 5th, you tell us you were out shopping from 9:30 in the morning until 12 noon.
Yes, that's right.
Did you go by bus or by car?
I took the Mini. There were a number of stores I wanted to visit.
Therefore, there must be a number of people who could testify as to the various places you called at, mustn't there?
What sort of people?
Well, salesgirls, shop assistants, people who you bought things from.
Well, no. As a matter of fact, I didn't buy anything that day. I was looking for a special kind of material for some curtains, but I couldn't find it. After calling at 4 shops, I just came home again.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I'm sorry?
Well, it really would be much better for the jury if you could establish your movements positively on the day of on the morning of December the 5th, Mrs. Archer, because from 9:30 in the morning until 12 noon is just good time for you to get to Market Stawley and back, arriving at Mr. Pirbright's shop at around 11 o'clock.
But I didn't do that. Celia Alcott did that, to sell the vase she'd stolen from our quarters.
Celia Alcott has got dark hair.
She wore a wig. She's lying about being at Fulchester all day, it's obvious.
Somebody's lying, I agree, Mrs. Archer. I wonder who. We really must establish that at long last, mustn't we?
You are John Priest of 10 The Close University Precincts, and you are Junior Professor of English at Fulchester University?
I am, and that is correct.
And you knew the late Martin Archer, Professor of History?
I did. Martin and I headed up a couple of college committees together. Also, we shared an interest in the theatre and worked with dramatic groups within the university.
Yes, did you call on Professor Archer on December the 1st last, 3 days prior to the disappearance of the vase?
I did. I wanted to see Martin about a talk he'd vaguely promised to give to a group of mine on the Restoration Theatre. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes, would you tell the court about this visit, please?
Well, I hadn't made an appointment or anything like that. I just knew Martin hadn't any lectures that day and reckoned he'd be at home. I went round to the French windows that opened onto his little patch of garden. He liked people to do that, saved bashing on the front door and disturbing his wife. When I got there, I noticed that one of the side windows was slightly open and I could hear voices coming from inside.
Voices? What voices, Mr. Priest? Did you recognize them?
Well, one was Professor Archer's, and the other was a woman. Vaguely familiar, but I didn't recognize it to identify.
And could you hear what these voices were saying exactly, Mr. Priest?
I didn't listen in, you know. I mean, as I said, one of the side windows was
Yes,
open.
yes, that's
I
quite
couldn't
understood.
really hear-
Pray continue.
Well, the woman said, "Will you help me or won't you? I must know." Professor Archer replied, "For goodness sake, haven't I helped enough?" Then there was a bit more talk, which I couldn't hear. And all at once, the woman appeared at the French windows, moving up, and she said, "You're a fool. If you won't help me, I shall just have to help myself."
I see. And then?
Well, I edged to one side, and the woman came past me and headed for the campus buildings. She didn't see me. It was a student, Celia Alcott.
You knew Miss Alcott, did you, Mr. Priest?
I knew her by sight and by reputation, the tigress of women's lib. Fortunately, I didn't have to teach her.
And what happened after Miss Alcott left?
Well, I went in to see Martin then. He was plainly rattled about something, but he made no reference as to what had occurred. We discussed the matter I called about, and I left about 15 minutes later.
Yes, it might be asked of you, Mr. Priest, why, if you overheard these remarks, you didn't mention them to the police at the time when Miss Alcott was arrested for theft.
You know, I can't be very clear about that. For one thing, I'm not especially fond of policemen. And for another, from what I heard at the time, the evidence against Celia Alcott was pretty formidable. I saw no reason to make it worse.
But now?
Oh, now it's a completely different matter. Mrs. Archer is in trouble. One must tell all one knows.
Thank you, Mr. Priest.
Mr. Priest, I may not, of course, ask you what you think the remarks you overheard between Professor Archer and Celia Alcott mean, since that would be merely asking your opinion. However, as she was leaving, Miss Alcott looked back to address Professor Archer in the words, "You're a fool." Now, would you take that to be a standard remark between teacher and pupil at Fulchester?
No, I would not.
Then there must have been unusual circumstances, or a relationship rather more intimate than commonly exists between tutor and pupil.
Perhaps.
Yes, perhaps. Thank you, Mr. Priest.
Well, thank you, Mr. Priest. You may stand down. Gentlemen, before you sum up, there is one piece of evidence on which I should like to be a great deal clearer. If you have no objection, I should like to recall Mr. Victor Perbright, the antique dealer who purchased the vase on the 5th of December. Mr. Perbright, you will recall that you are still on oath. Mr. Perbright, in this case you will realize a great deal depends on your identification of the accused, Mrs. Winifred Archer, as the woman who sold you the vase on December the 5th. I want to be perfectly clear that you are still certain that that woman was the accused.
Yes, yes, I am quite sure, my lord.
Now, it has been pointed out to you that the light in your shop was not very good at the time, and that perhaps you were not seeing very clearly because you were wearing your reading glasses throughout most of the interview.
No, I did not make a mistake. No, my lord. The woman was that woman there, Winifred Archer, the accused. It's stupid. I'm not so silly that I can't tell a middle-aged woman from a young girl with a wig on. Well, nobody's as silly as that.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Perbright. You may stand down. Mr. Lloyd?
Members of the jury, it's very clear by now that either Celia Alcott or Winifred Archer has lied throughout this case. The defence has suggested that Celia Alcott has lied as part of a student plot to discredit Mrs. Archer. But if such a plot exists and the students had really gone to the lengths of dressing up as middle-aged women, fooling antique dealers and fabricating evidence, why in their master plan have they failed to give Celia Alcott a concrete alibi for December the 5th? Out of a campus of thousands of students, they surely would have provided us with at least half a dozen people who would swear that they saw Miss Alcott on that day. And again, if the intention of this women's lib student plot was a serious attempt to incriminate Mrs. Archer, why did they give the name Kate Greer of Braburn Road, which screams women's lib, even to my learned friend? Members of the jury, if Celia Alcott is the one who's been lying, she's obviously not attempted to make a very good job of it. Now let us look at the evidence against Winifred Archer. First, Victor Perbright has positively identified her as the woman who sold him the vase. Now, despite theatrical attempts by the defence to question his eyesight and a manifestly fair challenge by his lordship, Mr. Perbright remains convinced he was not mistaken. And remember, during this transaction with Kate Greer, he was only 2 to 3 feet away from her, not the length of this courtroom. Secondly, Winifred Archer cannot account for her movements on the morning of December the 5th, but she does admit that she was out of the house at the time the vase was being sold. Now, members of the jury, I put it to you that Professor Archer and Celia Olcott were lovers, that he secretly sympathised with her women's lib views, that he contributed money to their funds, that Mrs. Archer discovered the affair and threatened to expose her husband, that he then lied at Miss Olcott's trial and thus betrayed both her and himself, and that 2 days after the police visited him with new evidence about the vase, he killed himself out of guilt and remorse. The suggestion that he killed himself out of a personal suspicion of cancer without any final medical confirmation is impossible to believe. And I must ask you to find Winifred Archer guilty as charged.
You have only to question everything that my learned friend has said seriously, ladies and gentlemen, to realize that he draws disastrously false conclusions from the evidence presented, and that Winifred Archer is plainly innocent. Well, first, the identification. Now, after my demonstration here in court, can you really think that Victor Pirbright's eyesight can be relied upon for a positive identification? Now, secondly, if Winifred Archer cannot account for her movements on December the 5th, well, neither can Celia Olcott. Miss Olcott, in fact, maintains that she was in her room at the university all day, not even emerging for lunch. That seems remarkable, to say the least. She had much more opportunity to have got to Market Stawley and back than Mrs. Archer. And thirdly, the £150 is such a large sum for a conservative-minded professor to have contributed to the cause of women's lib. And by a strange coincidence, of course, just the same amount as the stolen vase was sold for, and which Miss Olcott deposited in her bank account 2 days after the theft. Well, ladies and gentlemen, these are inconsistencies. And for the rest, there are mysteries. Why Professor Archer committed suicide, who knows? But he did have a cancer. The love affair, is that true or false? Again, we cannot be sure, but it doesn't alter the fact that Miss Olcott threatened to help herself just a few days before the theft. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I suggest that the prosecution have failed wholly to prove their case, and the only proper verdict is one of not guilty.
Members of the jury, in this case, the accused, Winifred Archer, is charged with conspiring with her late husband to pervert the course of justice and with perjury. Now, the first offence consists of making an agreement to bring false evidence or to suppress evidence. The perjury consists of deliberate falsehoods stated on oath. Now, you may think that the real question here is, who is telling the truth, Mrs. Archer or Miss Olcott? Do you believe beyond reasonable doubt that Mrs. Archer was the woman who sold that vase to the antique dealer because she wanted to revenge herself on Celia Olcott? That is the point you have got to decide. You will now retire and consider your verdict.
All stand.
The jury have been out for over 3 hours. The judge has instructed them that he will accept a majority verdict, and they have just returned.
Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict on both counts on which you are all agreed?
No.
Have you reached a majority verdict?
No.
You have failed to reach a verdict?
We have failed.
Then I have no alternative but to order a retrial to commence on Monday week.
Next week, our cameras return to watch another leading case in the Crown Court.